Well, hello folks, welcome back to another Lost Media video. This time I'm going to talk about lost media that was found in the weirdest of places. Let's go. Rayman is one of those series, the type of series where despite constant interest from the fans, the publisher does absolutely nothing with it. Rayman has it even worse than that, since my dude got replaced by the gaming equivalent of the Minions. But before the Dark Ages, Rayman had his own trilogy that was pretty good actually. Out of the three games, Rayman 2 is often considered the best. This 3D platformer has been released on like 40 platforms, but first released in 1999 on the N64 and PC. Rayman 2 is pretty influential to helping standardize the 3D platformer in its infancy. But did you know that originally Rayman 2 was planned to be completely 2D? This version of the game was finished enough to be shown in magazines back in the day, but it was actually scrapped due to the devs seeing other 3D platformers like Crash Bandicoot and wanting to get onto that 3D platformer train of the era. This change in development, however, created a question: how would Rayman look in 3D? This may sound like a dumb question, but compare Rayman 2's Rayman to the first game's design, and you'll see some changes. Not exactly massive changes, but it's definitely noticeable. So how do we go from this to this? Well, the answer lies in an animation called Rayman's Training. This was worked on during Rayman 2's development, and sees the limbless hero fighting a sandbag in preparation for Smash Bros or some shit, I don't know. The most notable feature of the short though is how Rayman is rocking his Rayman 1 design, and it looks fucking weird. Other than that though, it's a nice little animation, all things considered. It was first shown in early 1998 at a film festival, but there were ads from 1997 that used edited clips from the short. Some clips were even used in Rayman 2's E3 trailer, but after that, Rayman's Training just disappeared. There was no home release or even a mention of it past its premiere. Many people didn't even know it existed until someone noticed this big-eyed freak living in their Rayman 2 E3 trailer, and thus the search began. There were plenty of finds like those ads, but the short itself eluded the searchers. Meanwhile, in another part of the gaming world, some data miners were looking through the files of another Ubisoft game, Beyond Good and Evil. You may know it for having that one sequel in development hell for the past like 16 years, but basically a prototype was found, and within, Rayman's Training was hiding in the files for some reason. It may have been in 240p without audio, but it was here in full at last. There were some other animations that people thought were part of the short, but as far as we know, this is the full short. Someone actually went out of their way to make a version with audio, and it's pretty funny. I don't know, I just find it really odd that this, of all things, into the files of a mostly unrelated game. Like, I don't know, did someone just like look through their hard drive and was like, oh yeah, Rayman Training, let's just put that as a temporary placeholder. I wonder what thinking behind that was. Also, shout out to the Mr. Bones Show on YouTube.com, because they already did a video with Rayman's Training, but that was before it was found. So sorry if I accidentally did the same topic, God forbid. But please forgive me, Mr. Bones. Please. SpongeBob is kind of the mascot of lost media when you think about it. Like, there's an entire wiki worth of stuff, but I want to talk about the only found workprint from the series, as far as I know. In case you weren't aware, a workprint is basically an in-production version of an episode or film. It's usually made so it can be reviewed for quality by executives or focus groups. Most major productions have workprints made, but rarely do they make their way out into the public in full. SpongeBob workprints in particular have very little known about them, aside from the first movie's workprint, which used Ween's Morning Glory instead of Ocean Man, and yeah, no wonder they changed it. But a while back, some Lost Media Wiki user went to their local thrift shop and found a CD containing a workprint of the episode Nasty Patty, aka that one episode where SpongeBob kills a health inspector and has to dispose of the body. This was luckily archived, so you can now watch it in full. This version opens a little bit differently to the aired episode. The final version opens with the French narrator telling of how SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs murdered a man, before it cuts to Mr. Krabs smelling out the health inspector's presents. Yes, really. Then he and SpongeBob start panicking. The work print, on the other hand, opens with SpongeBob mistaking the health inspector for a regular customer before Krabs realizes who he is, and the episode from there is basically the same, aside from some slightly different writing. Aside from the minor line differences, the most notable differences are the visuals and the audio. As this is a work print, there's no finished animation. Just storyboards with camera pans and zooms. The storyboards themselves are also inconsistent in quality. They range from rough sketches to animation ready. Audio is a similar story, as it mixes finished voice lines that would actually appear in the episode with scratch tracks done by the production crew. These temporary takes are pretty fucking bad if I'm being honest. I should also mention there is zero music or sound effects, and the voices are panned weirdly. Like, some characters will be panned hard right or hard left throughout the entire episode, and it's kind of weird to hear on headphones. My theory is that this was done for the editors so they could easily mix the voices in case they lost the raw voice takes or something like that. I'm not really sure. Aside from all that though, this is a really interesting look into the production of SpongeBob, since work prints like these are rarely talked about, let alone shown after production is ended. It's also very mysterious how the CD just appeared at a thrift shop one day. Like, how did this end up here? It's unlikely we'll ever know the truth, but who knows? I don't. Lost arcade games are some of the most oddest things in the world of lost media. A lot of the time, they were available to the public before being pulled, like many other mediums. But the difference here is that arcade machines don't get destroyed or misplaced. Either they are converted into another game, or they make their way into the hands of collectors. Akka Arrh, I'm just call it Akka, is the defining example of this. The space shooter sees the player defend themselves from waves of enemies while stuck in the center of the screen. It looks pretty fun by early 80s arcade standards, but the story behind it is far from fun. Back in 82, the game was tested in a handful of arcades to see how well it would perform. By all accounts, it failed. People said it was too hard and unfun, so Atari, the publisher, pulled the plug on the actual release. To save on money, Atari made only 3 units in total, so they didn't have hundreds of this unsellable arcade game lying around. These cabinets would lay dormant in some warehouse for many years, until they began to be bought by collectors, sometime in the 90s or 2000s. The timeline of events is really blurry and uncertain until 2012, when it was shown off at a rare arcade expo convention thing in California. For many years, this was the only high quality footage available, until 2019, when main world user SmithDog posted new, unseen images from Akka and released the ROM for all to see. People went insane since this was a mythical lost arcade game from the golden age of gaming, found after nearly 40 years. This discovery, though, wasn't just met with praise, as some internet detectives had some legal concerns over the release. As there's only 3 known machines, the owners of the machines are very protective and defensive over the machines. As such, they had refused to dump the ROMs from their machines, so how the hell did the game surface online? There's 2 major theories. First is that the ROM online was stolen. Yes folks, we might have some fucking Metal Gear Solid style espionage going on here. It proposes that a technician hired to work on other games secretly dumped Akka's ROM behind the owner's back before giving it to SmithDog for release. There's little to no hard evidence of this actually happening, and the same can be said for the second theory, which theorizes that one of the owners themselves dumped and released the ROM. Either way, you can now play this once lost arcade game for free. And that's the video, folks. Subscribe, do all the stuff that YouTubers say you should do. And yeah, peace out, people on the internet that I will never meet in my lifetime. Peace.